We want to start off this week's podcast by sending our love and regards to Tom Lockyer and his family, everyone at Luton Town, and want to just celebrate the great efforts of the medical team for both Luton Town and Bournemouth after Saturday's match where Tom went down with suspected cardiac arrest. He's in hospital, there are tests ongoing, and the club will give a full update in due time on his current condition. But we just hope he has a full recovery, and we hope that his family are well and with him at this time. This is the beautiful game that he loves and we all love, and it's a shame that, again, he's had another incident that's taken him out from playing, and we wish him all the best. And on this week's episode of One Kick from Glory, we are talking about change. We're talking about some nice things, and we're talking about some interesting things as well. And we do want to start off with that incident, not so much about Tom Lockyer in particular, but more so about the ongoing concerns in football around players' health and well-being, which has been a topic we've talked about quite a few times throughout the time on this podcast, but it's one that every time we have an incident like this, we have to sit back and reflect on what is being done, what could be done better, and how are things in terms of the welfare for our players. And as always on this podcast, I'm joined by Craig and Matthew. And we're going to start off there. I guess for you, Craig, when you, not so much this incident with Tom, because the club and the family have asked for the privacy, but in general, are you really concerned about player welfare and how we seem to always be on the verge of another incident like this with players going on?
And 100% I am very concerned because players are playing a lot of football. There's a lot of Premier League football, Championship football, international football. They've got World Cup, Euros, and the Nation League. So you've got so much football. Our players are getting enough rest. Our players are getting enough time to recover. I know football's a big money sport now. It's got a lot of money in football now, and that's where the game has kind of changed a lot from the 80s and early 90s, I would say, where there's a lot of games being played. Players' welfare, they don't really care. Like, they can, if you're injured or not ever, they can replace you at any moment. So there's not really a care for the players' welfare anymore. It's all about, it's a money business thing now, where everything's about success and failure. So if you're doing well, if you're not doing well, then we'll discard you, kind of thing. I think the authorities need to do more for players' welfare and make sure players are taken care of properly, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big topic of concern. Obviously, we know from next season there's going to be a new format for the Champions League, and that's going to lead to more games of football. We know that because of the Winter World Cup that we had in Qatar, which was a great World Cup, mind you, but accommodating that World Cup meant that the players have taken on extra load and had less rest time. I guess for you, Matthew, what's your general thoughts around this player well-being and what could be done to sort of look into these incidents and try and understand, is there a common link with all these players and what's happening to them?
I think, as fans, we all dream and we all have that dream of being a footballer, being in the glitz, the glamour, playing for different teams, playing all around the world and earning that money. And that's the kind of thing I want to talk about a little bit. Just like Craig said, what the money thing is, I think as fans and even people that complain about the amount of money that they get, I think at most part, when we get things like this, we forget that they are still people. They are still ordinary. They are still people just like you and me. They need their rest and they need their time. And as much as we talk about how much money they earn, which, stupid as it may be, they are not invincible. And it's happening too many times in the last, 2 times in the last 3 years that we know of. Like, we have Eriksen at the Euros, obviously Lockyer at the weekend at Luton. Others that we just do not know about. More needs in an era of when we're caring more about, the mental state of people and the health of people. Maybe more needs to be looked into things like this. There's players that are so tired, so much demand played on their bodies and their health and their mind and things like that. More and more players are coming out and saying that actually it was like hell. It nearly killed me. Look at that, likes of Dele Alli came out. He looks at likes of David Bentley, and he came out. And one from a long way back was, I think it was someone called Leon McKenzie who played for Norwich. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the same sort of thing happened to him. He retired younger. He just could not take it anymore. It was such a demand, and now it's like Craig said, it's more. It wasn't that long ago we were crowning Man City with the Champions League final. That was back in June. The season kicks back off in August, not including pre-season games. They don't get a winker or a moment just to sit down and just recollect their thoughts from the games that has It's just happened, and it's only going to get more and more as the seasons go on. I think this Christmas period, they've got a gap where they can rest. I think it was a week or so where they're just not doing any kind of football. But in all honesty, with what the demand had demanded so far and what they got demanding coming up next year, is that enough? Like, what are these bodies who care so much about people? What are they doing with things when things like this happen? Because with Lockyer alone, it happened twice in a year in the space of months. So what are the physios doing? What are the managers doing? What are the clubs doing to make sure this doesn't happen? Because granted, thank goodness he's okay. Honestly, thank goodness he's okay. You know, it would have been bad if it was something worse. So, like, what are these charities and owners and peoples, and you buy them all big money, push them out there and do the game. What are you doing for them as employees? You know, what are you doing?
That's a big question to ask. Obviously, of course, we know, like, from this year with Rafael Varane, he came out in the summer and said as well that the fixture congestion is too much. I think even I heard younger players at Real Madrid, like Tchouameni and Camavinga themselves, both was having a conversation saying that for them, it's like it's a lot. Because I think as much as footballers are really well compensated, and that is always the argument that gets put whenever you say about their well-being is, yeah, but they get paid really well. They do get paid really well, but the big difference now in football compared to, say, even like the early 2000s is the intensity of matches is much higher on a game-by-game basis. In the early 2000s, there were some matches where, like, before kickoff, the other opposition knew they lost. So they probably didn't try as hard.
Yeah.
The team that were going to win knew they were going to win before kickoff, not because the game was fixed, but because they were just that much better. And so they could, what you call active resting games, they could get 2-3-0 up before half-time and then just kind of cruise the rest of the game. So it's very different, whereas now every point is so precious. The way how managers drill their team, and it's not to, like, point a finger of blame at any one individual thing. It's how can we look at the whole system and make it better? And I think that's where the conversation needs to go. It's not just about saying clubs should do this, coaches should do that, players should do that, but actually holistically and as a whole, how can we all come together and make this better? UEFA and FIFA have to take a big look in the mirror and say, look, we are flogging these people to make a profit. And if they can't perform, then what do you really have? I mean, it's a blessing that we didn't lose too many top players to the World Cup, you know, with injuries, but we did lose a few. And you think with the fixtures keep going, you know, you don't want to have a World Cup where you don't have the best players compete. I mean, imagine if this past World Cup there was no Messi, Neymar, Mbappe, or Ronaldo there. I know Ronaldo's not what he used to be, but imagine if there was none of them. And you're thinking, who are we going to look at next? You know, you don't really want to have that. So I think that's a big point of that needs to be addressed, and definitely one I need to look into. And we'll see how that goes. In terms of other changes that's happening, of course, we had the news as well announced by Sir Ian Wright, I call him that, Uncle Righty, that he will be leaving Match of the Day at the end of the season, which is a big shock to all of us, but he feels it's the right time. And, you know, I know he's coming in a Netflix movie coming out in January. So if you guys, like, just stay tuned for that, because, you know, Uncle Righty's acting. But for you, Craig, like, how did you take that news, and what's one of your favourite memories of Ian Wright on Match of the Day?
I was shocked. I thought he had a good partnership. Him, Gary Lineker and Alan Shearer had a great bond, the way how they worked together. I don't know, maybe he's moving on to bigger and better things. Maybe he just wants to take it more, spend more time with his family. I know he's got young kids as well, so maybe he wants to spend time with his young kids, watch them grow up and all that. So I was a bit surprised that he decided to leave. Maybe he wants to leave on a high and then give it to the younger guys to take over. I would say maybe that Sean Wright Phillips might take over, have more time on. My best moment, when we beat Bournemouth last season, and he was so ecstatic. I saw it online. He was so happy that we won. And you know, he's always been a great ambassador for football. Not just on the pitch, like off the pitch. He's done a lot of charity work, and he's very good with the women's game as well, promoting the women's game a lot. He's always promoting the women's football. What I was gonna say is he's just a legend, man. He does like, you know, he's the guy I looked up to when I was growing up, like, because he was the guy at Arsenal, and even still to this day, like, he's still inspiring people who want to make it late in pro football, who never thought there was an opportunity for him to make it, and he had the opportunity. He never gave up, and he followed his dreams and was given the opportunity and he took it with both hands. Imagine if we find another Ian Wright today. There's a lot of them out there, but not given the opportunity. So
that's the big thing. Obviously, a lot of people have that talent, and it's just, if you're not given the opportunity to show it, then you can't get really far. And it's a testament to him that he was able to do that. I guess for you, Matthew, how different do you think that is now going to be, like Match of the Day? And what would you say is probably his legacy from his time on Match of the Day?
I think his legacy goes beyond even Match of the Day, because if you think about all the things he's done since hanging up his boots and going into punditry and other things like that, he throws himself into literally everything that he does, you know, whether it's presenting, obviously talking about the women's game, social media. He wants to get involved. I think he's very adaptable. He's a very adaptable guy because he knows and he looks at what's coming up and where his interest lies. And what he does, he jumps onto something that's growing, or there's something that will grow, like the women's game, like on podcasts and things like that. And I think he's looking at his time on Match of the Day where it's just like, it's a saturating thing. And I think I want to try, while I still can, while I still got the energy, I want to jump on to the next like big thing that I think is gonna be good for football and things like that. So maybe he it wouldn't surprise me if he could possibly go around, like, if he hasn't already done, go around schools, like school football places, and be like, look, you get to a certain age, it can happen for you if you work for it, if you've got good coaches and good people around him, like he did. You know, remember he talks about his teacher who always believed in him and stuck by him, and just like, you know, just these are the kind of people that you got to be listening to, and just like just cheering you on for everything that you do. So his legacy it goes beyond Match of the Day, because he just throws himself into everything that he does, and you have to admire it. And he does well at it because he works at it. It doesn't just come easy. He works at it. You can see that he does, and he loves it, and he's happy to do it. He's passionate about it, you know, and he's always on hand to give like his wisdom and his experience to people, to be like, don't do this, do this, be patient because I know it will come by, you know, stick to this. You know, if he tells you to do something, you're going to do it. If he tells you to stay in school, you'll do it. If he tells you to apply for that job, sit straight, set right, he'll do it. And I think it's a luxury to have someone like him around, because you just feel it off him. When was the last time you saw A, someone didn't like him, or B, he didn't light up a room? Like, think about it. As for Match of the Day, it's a funny one, because like the whole BBC is going through this whole thing of change. So it's gonna be interesting who they bring in his place. I think they're gonna do like maybe like a veteran who retired 10, maybe even 5 years ago, something like that. It's just to have more of a familiar thing of how the game is now. So like how they did with Michael Richards. He hasn't not long retired, but he recognises how the game is. So maybe they bring in someone only retired 5-6 years ago or so, and then just kind of just see what goes from there. But they're struggling because they're fighting on like against some streamers and influencers and stuff like that. So whoever they got in has got to be a big draw, big draw.
Yeah, it's definitely got to be a big draw. We know for certain it won't be Joe Barton. Anyway, but let's talk about Uncle Wrighty's beloved Arsenal. A 2-0 win at home against Brighton. Waka, 60 million down the drain. Kai Havertz scores again. It's on a good run of form, getting the goals that matter, showing in match after match that sometimes with a transfer, it does take time, and the manager's plan, it needs to be given time to come to fruition. Sometimes you can see from the outset a player's just not going to work. But also at that same token, as fans, it's maybe like a testament to maybe a bit of patience was required. I think the key thing people had been saying from the summer as well with Kai Havertz is that he hadn't played with all of our key players. Zinchenko wasn't fit when he was starting most of those games, so he didn't have that key structure. Jesus wasn't always next to him in the middle either. And yet now that we've got all these key pieces back together, minus Tommy P, you're starting to see the guy flourish. And now the big question is like, how far can you go? And the role that was created for him with Xhaka's departure is now starting to make a lot more sense. For you, Craig, how happy are you not only with the performance, but the team performance, but also with Kai Havertz as well and his growing influence in this Arsenal team?
Well, I'm happy with the team performance. It was a great win yesterday. We scored 2 late goals, or one second half, one towards the end of the game. Brighton didn't have a sniff at all. In the second half, first of all, Gross should have scored, but he went wide. Other from that, we played solid again. Gabriel, again at centre-back. I think he has to be up there for one of the players of the season. Centre-back, he's been solid. Ever since he's been dropped at the start of the season, he didn't sulk or didn't moan. He just got on with it, got back into the team. Him and Saliba had the best defensive partnership this season. I think we have 9 clean sheets in the league now. That's the best in the league. So we know how to shut down teams now. And I thought that with Kai Havertz, everyone was saying what a waste of money, but I think he's proven his point now that he's going to be a great player for us. I know some Chelsea fans will say that, like, why do we pay all that money for him? But I think Arteta saw something in him that other managers in the past didn't really see what he could do, or never played him in the right position, I would say. And he's got a good young team around him. You've got Saka, you've got Odegaard, you've got Declan Rice, and you've got Jesus, you've got Martinelli, you've got Trossard. So you've got the key ingredients there for him to feed off and work. So yeah, I think that he's done well. And I think this season he'll definitely get 10 or more goals this season if he continues scoring the way he's scoring right now. And he'll beat the record that he scored at Chelsea last season, how many goals he scored. So
he already has.
I think he has already beaten how many goals he scored at Chelsea last season. So I think the fans were a bit harsh at first to get on to his back because he's a new player, and I think sometimes with new players you have to give them time to settle in and all that. And I think because he came for so much money, and of course he didn't do well at Chelsea last season or whatever, everyone thought, oh, why are we buying him? But he's proven his point, and that's what you do. When you're underdog and everyone writes you off and says, why are you wasting money on him? You go out there and prove to everyone wrong, and that's what he's doing. So fair play to him. Live long, may it continue. So yeah.
And just a clarification on the clean sheets mark. Arsenal, Newcastle both have 7 clean sheets this season. Everton, Liverpool, Manchester United all have 6 clean sheets this season. Then it's Palace, Fulham, and Tottenham with 5, and then Villa and Bournemouth with 4. No Man City in sight. Says a lot, really, doesn't it? Says a lot. A very important result that. Just to kind of run over some stats of the Arsenal game. So possession-wise, it was 48.8% to Arsenal, 51.2% to Brighton. Arsenal had a total of 26 shots to Brighton's 6. Only 9 on target from that 1 for Brighton. Arsenal had 10 corners to Brighton's 1. And passes-wise, Arsenal had 516 passes to Brighton's 550. The stat I want to homing on is that 26 shots to 6. This was clearly a game where Arteta coached to 5-0. We only got 2. How important, Matthew, do you think it is that this dominance that Arsenal have been showing throughout the season, a different kind of dominance to last year, whereas last year it was more like a battering ram or a hammer and tongs, or like a fire and brimstone type effect, like where we were just blitzing teams for fun. Whereas this year it's a lot more methodical. It's almost like the Man City's death by 1,000 cuts, but we're doing more like a death by 50 cuts because we haven't quite figured out how to kind of get the goal in the net more with the volume. But how impressed are you with what Arsenal are doing so far?
Hate to admit it, because it's working, and that's the kind of thing that I want to see for our club. Not exactly what you do, but just having a system where you know what to do if things go wrong. If you're 1-0 down, even if it doesn't work in the end, you have that system, you play it over and over again, and the next game, you may smell a little bit of blood, you turn up the heat just a little bit. It's like the perfect recipe every single time, and you've worked so hard to get from point A to point B, but you've kept on doing that every single season. So where you are now, you had the few little bits there with your Rices, your Havertz, Trossard came in earlier in the year, and you've got rid of the things that probably just didn't work. It's a credit to how you've done with it. And Arteta clearly had this idea for a very long time. He just needed support and backing and just explain the reasons for why he's doing what he's doing. Like you said, this is probably one of the games where a 5 could have been had against, a good opposition in Brighton who were doing well in Europe still. So, and granted, it's not a big club, but they're a club that I want to watch because of their position in the table. But look, whatever you're doing right now, it's clearly working. And what makes it worse for the opposition coming up is that there's two sides of Arsenal you can get. You can get the team that's all fire and brimstone, but you can also get that other one that's death by 50 cuts. It all depends on your approach. Like with Man City, again, if you approach them in a certain way and get them, you could be all right. But if you go in them and you show that little bit too much respect and, hero worship, they're gonna show you why they are in the season. And I've said before, your place this year is better than it was last year because there aren't many errors or problematic areas in the team, bar from maybe the guy in the sticks. But you'll slowly get over that. You've got two starters.
That's true.
You've got two starters for crying out loud. One of them is bound to do good. He got a clean sheet. It gets back to winning ways with a clean sheet. So, yeah, clearly you managed to get over that one. I think it's because you've all got a target in mind where it's either going to be some kind of silverware or finishing very firmly in the top four, which is going to keep everybody happy. That's why they're there for obvious reasons. But it depends. It's how many games are we now? 21 maybe 21, 19, 20, 21.
So we currently have played 17 games.
17 games. So let's say it is around a third of the games. Let's say it's around about that, maybe slightly less. You need to keep that on for longer. You need to keep that. The season's only going to get more demanding. You've got international duty coming up for the Euro, so a lot more demand for international duty during the year, building up to that. You obviously got your Champions League group announced today with Porto. That's going to be demanding with the travel and all that. Should you get any further, maybe even more demanding. You got the FA Cup coming up, which you're going to want to do something like that, not including the Premier League. So you've done well with it so far now, still within the top three of the main clubs competing for the title. It's going to get way more difficult going in as the season's end. You fell off around March and April. That's something that you can't afford. You've got to, if you want what you want after 20 years, you've got to keep going from here all the way to the end. No slowing down.
Yeah, so 2 games away from the halfway point in the season. Well into a third into it. So things are going quite well in that regard. And it's going to be important to maintain that form. Obviously, the big game coming up next is Liverpool at Anfield on the weekend. So that's going to be quite a seismic one. I guess for you, Craig, just looking ahead to that fixture, considering how last year's fixture went, and it was a bit disappointing, the outcome, because after 23 minutes being 2-0 up at Anfield, that's unheard of. For Arsenal in recent times, we go there, we get beaten. It's been like, that's just what happens. But to put up a good performance and to really have them on the ropes. I mean, if we'd scored the third chance we had in that match, it really could have been something special.
Could have been a cricket score.
But what do you think needs to be different this time around with the result? And having looked at how they played against Man United, and we'll get onto that in a second, how much encouragement do you have for how we will perform against them at their home?
Well, we can definitely test the defenders. Like Trent. Trent's good going forward, but defending, Martinelli will absolutely destroy him. Gabriel Jesus scored a good goal ahead of last season against Alisson. So I fancy if we can get a couple of goals up early. The only mistake we made last season was we riled up the Anfield crowd. Granit Xhaka riled up the Anfield crowd. Never ever do that because that's their 12th man. Once that crowd starts getting hyped up
and stuff,
then we'll need to go there. They're going to be hostile. The fans are going to be hostile towards us. If we go 2 or 3-0 up early, I think this season we've got a stronger midfield. Declan Rice can shut down. I think our midfield is better than their midfield anyway. So if we can shut down their midfield, Gabriel and Saliba never played that game last season. If he played that game, I don't think we'd have lost that game, to be honest with you. So if we can shut down their midfield, shut down their attackers, we should win the game. But one thing about Liverpool is that they drew yesterday, but one thing you got to worry about them, they're going to be like a wounded animal because they always score at home. So we have to make sure we can keep a clean sheet at Anfield. Not a lot of teams have gone to Anfield and kept a clean sheet in a long time. They always score goals at home. And not just 1 goal, 2 or 3 or 4. So we have to make sure we don't make no individual errors. Everyone plays as a team. We work hard for each other. But I fancy Saka against Tsimikas as well. So I fancy our wingers to get joy out of the players. So yeah,
Yeah, it's going to be one good battle. And of course, the key player we didn't have last year is Mr. Declan Rice, Arsenal's Player of the Month again. Most matches he's man of the match. The guy is just so good. Like, I saw a tweet the other day, was looking at, who was the better value for money for the 100 million, Grealish versus Rice. Does that require an answer? Really? Doesn't require an answer. I like Jack. I like him. But look, I'm sorry, but English Alex Hleb. But I guess for you, Matthew, what difference do you think having Rice in midfield is going to have for that match? And obviously, there's lots of talk as well that Partey might be available, might make an appearance. But how important do you think Rice is going to
be? As vital as he's been up to this point, up to the season, like just so important, having a presence there, a leader in his own right, someone who's learned how to lead a midfield and hold tight a midfield, and it was such a big problem for you last year. You were fun and you were adventurous, but one thing you weren't was organised. And he has come in that and made the bit that needs to be organised, and left the fun bit to everyone else. So you going into Anfield, they're going to recognise that as a threat. It's not just a fact of the position he plays or how good he is and the command he requires. He above all is a leader, and they're going to recognise that sort of thing. So they're going to want to. If they're going to want to like really test your, it's not even going to be one in against the midfield, but they're going to want to test yours just because yours is better than theirs at the moment. But their attack has always been consistent throughout these years. So the game is going to be decided by, I think, by two factors: how good their attack is and how good your midfield is. Because you said earlier about a presence, a wind-up merchant in the team, but you don't want to wind up the Anfield crowd. So if there's one person that's going to wind people up, I reckon if he plays, it will be Ramsdale, because he's that kind of person to do something like that. He ain't going to play. If he plays. He ain't going to play. Of course. No, but Raya's doing really, but also Raya, he's recovered from the last game against Villa. Yeah, against Villa. So look, it's a much closer game than it was last year. Last year, you almost conquered that hoodoo with Liverpool. This year, you conquered the hoodoo with Man City, which I think is going to give you a lot of stones walking into this game. So I don't think this is going to be a Liverpool runaway that we've known, and it wasn't that last year. So, dare to dream.
That's not our motto, but I take the sentiment. I take the sentiment indeed. Yeah, we just do. We don't dare to dream. We actually do. Unlike some clubs out there. Anyway, Man City. Bit of a weird situation for them. They're going, I say a weird situation. I feel like this is what happens when you cheat. Eventually you get caught. And then whilst we're going through the process of dealing with you getting caught out and you having to make up your excuses, things start to fall around you. That'll be a lesson for people out there. Cheating never works. Doesn't pay off. It ain't worth it. But they drew 2-2 at home after being comfortably 2-0 up against Crystal Palace. I have to say, credit to Roy Hodgson, who just knows how to get his players to do what needs to be done.
At the Etihad.
He just knows what to do at that ground. And Michael Olise getting that crucial penalty, was unlucky with a free kick earlier in the half as well, but that kid's diamond. I guess start with you, Matthew. What can you say about what's happening at the Etihad, and do we think this could be the end of... Well, I say do we think, like, I personally would like him to stay a little bit longer, just so we can dunk on his head a bit longer. But do you think this might be the beginning of the end for Guardiola and his time at Man City as well?
Funny you say that, because one thing I haven't done is a hot take, and I've just come up with one right now that I've seen.
Go for it.
I think he's losing the dressing room.
Oh.
I think he's losing. Very slowly. I'm talking 2 miles an hour a day. But it's not all harmonious in the Sky Blues. That's scorching, I know, but the results are not what you expect of a team that's trying to defend another title, going for a record-winning title. I think it's like 7 in how many years or something like that.
Well, it'll be a 4-peat if they do it.
A 4-time, which has never been done. From the moment the first game of the season with Pep and Haaland, the last game they had, I think they drew. He wasn't happy in another game, but I think some players are not happy.
I don't know about that one, Chief.
I'm just saying, a harmonious team doesn't perform like that, especially one as good as them. I told you it was a hot take, but like I think that 115 charges is take it from someone who knows when outside problems linger over your heads as a club, they affect you more than they do. And I think it's affecting a lot of them now because a lot of people know and they saw what happened with Everton, and I think it's coming in their mind with those 115. They're aware of something that's going to happen and they just do not know. We're not as cohesive as they were. Even when the likes of Rodri coming in, it still doesn't seem to solve much of a problem. We could talk about De Bruyne. We can always talk about De Bruyne, but they've gotten more than enough there that's going to get them out of a jam. But I think we touched on this. I think you said this before. They've lost a lot of their like core heart-like players, like your Gundawans, like your Mahrez. Obviously, De Bruyne's out. And I think it's a case of where they need to kind of establish what it means to play for Manchester City going after that, under the demands that Pep has and the standard that they have. They've been used to this standard for more than 10 years, being in that kind of frame of success and performing. So did they do a Liverpool and go too hard the previous season and now they're going to have somewhat of an off season? No one really knows, but they're not as cohesive as they have been in the past. And I can only drop it down to some kind of something's happening backstage, whether it's to do with the players, whether it's to do with the 115 charges, not a clue. I don't know. It's one of the two. But hey, look, keep him around a little bit longer so we can slowly crumble at that empire.
That is
slowly crumble.
That's a very hot take. I mean, I actually went back and looked at the Premier League table last season at this same point in time after this many games, and they were on 41 points in second place. Arsenal were top and 43 points. Their goal difference was plus 32. They had won 13, drawn 2, lost 2. So far this season, they have 34 points. That's a bit of a drop-off there. They have won 10, drawn 4, lost 3. Their goal difference is 20. So yeah, there's a noticeable drop-off. I think the big thing is they're conceding a lot more goals. And they're not winning as much as they used to, or scoring as much. So
not dominating either.
Gone from 50 goals down to 40, gone from 18 goals conceded to 20. So it's not a massive drop-off, but that 10 goals drop-off and scored is big. But yeah. It's an interesting take. Craig, do you back it, or do you think that's probably a bit of a reach to say?
Matthew, I kind of have to side on Matthew on this one. I feel like I think there must be cracks in the changing room, really and truly, because they're not performing how they were performing last season. I know they're missing De Bruyne, but one player doesn't make a team. They've still got quality. They got Bernardo Silva. They still got Haaland. They got Alvarez. They got Doku. They got Grealish. They got Foden. They got core treble winners last season. So maybe sometimes as a club, as a manager, you're hearing the same voice over and over and over again. It can get, and you want so much together. Sometimes maybe a change of voice could be the difference in the club. So maybe they're tired of winning now. They've won everything now. They've won everything.
I don't know about that tired of winning. That's a strong thing to say, but
you know what I mean? They've won everything now. So maybe they're thinking, you know what?
I'm tired.
I've done everything I can. So
rest.
Yeah. And I feel the other teams like Arsenal and Liverpool are more hungry at all, because Liverpool only won it once since Guardiola's been there. Arsenal haven't won it at all.
No, they've only won it once, full stop.
Yeah, they only won it once. Arsenal haven't won it yet, but
Not throwing shade, it's the truth. You've only won one Premier League title.
they've only won it once. And City have been winning it, dominating for a long time. So I feel like sometimes dominant eras do come to an end.
They do. Ten Hag said that, but you're not part of it. So on the sideline still, boy.
But I feel like even when Man United were winning the league all the time, and then their era after Sir Alex Ferguson left, their domination of the Premier League just went down. Every team, Liverpool in the 80s and 70s and 80s were dominating for a long time. Their era went down. Arsenal from the 98 to 2004, that era of winning leagues and winning FA Cups. It's a cycle. Everyone has that. Chelsea was 2004-5 till
till 10, 11, 12. They've kind of sprinkled about.
Yeah. Their era's kind of, they're trying to come back again, trying to make the comeback, but their era's kind of gone down as well. So every big club goes through a cycle, and then when their time is to come back again, they'll come back again eventually. But I think it's better that way than not all one team winning the league all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. We'll see whether, what can happen. But here's the dilemma for Manchester United fans. I have to put it to you, because you have to choose one of three fates this season, and none of them are ones you're going to like. Either Man City do a 4-peat, Liverpool get their 20th league title, which is the whole reason Sir Alex Ferguson was one of the main things he wanted to achieve before he retired, and did it with Robin van Persie, which is why he wore the number 20 on his shirt. For those of you who didn't know, that's the reason why. Or Arsenal win their first league title in 20 years. So pick one. Pick your poison, because there is no other alternative. One of those three things will happen this season, unless if Aston Villa pull off a miracle and win the league, which is not impossible.
Do a Leicester.
But it's unlikely. So you got to pick your poison. Me, I feel like we should work together and let Arsenal win it, because I think that's the least of your biggest problems. Man City winning it 4 times in a row, that's Ferguson's legacy in the mud again. The treble last season is in the mud. Liverpool getting to number 20 after Ferguson worked so hard to get that 20. You don't want that. Arsenal, look, I know we have our thing. I know we have our rivalry, but in the grand scheme of things, Liverpool and Man City are bigger problems. They are bigger problems. We're not an issue. But yeah, I say all of that to say it's tough for them right now, because they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. But pick one. But of course, they held Liverpool to a draw at Anfield. Virgil van Dijk was very, very complimentary to Manchester United and said, how they came and didn't want to play football, which shows how far you have fallen. So like I said, of your 3 options, just pick the one in red and white, yeah? But I guess for you, Craig, when you look back on that game, what's something that stands out to you? And like Matthew was talking about the dressing room issues at Man City that he perceives could be a problem. Do you think the stench at Old Trafford is starting to really kind of cloud everything that's happening and what they do?
I feel ownership is the biggest problem right now. Sir Jim Ratcliffe still hasn't been taken over the club yet, and it's taking longer and longer and longer. January's coming up. They're definitely new players. 100% they need new players. They need to shift out some of the deadwood. They've still got a lot of deadwood in the club that needs to go. Still don't know what's going to happen with the manager. Is he going to get sacked? Is he going to stay? Is the new owner's going to want to make a change?
You got people like Sancho. What's going to happen with him?
You got Martial. You got a lot of deadwood club. You got a lot of deadwood players in the club that need to be. They just need to go now. They've been there for a long time. So thank you for your help and your services. Time to take a different chapter. I feel that. As I said before, and I'll say it again. Man United is one of the clubs that you can never write off. They can go on a long run. They can go on a long unbeaten run, and then act like nothing ever happened in the past. That's the thing. They can do that, and then you're thinking, how do they do it? That's one club you can never write off. They've won so many titles. They've won so many trophies. They know how to come back and go on the bounce back ability. Look at last week. They lost the game. This week they go to Anfield and get a draw. Everyone, all of us here can say we thought Liverpool were going to tank them like all 7 or 8. No, we're going to give them a big battering. They can go to Anfield and get a 0-0 draw. Then they go to the next game and they could lose the next game. And then you think to yourself, they're not consistent. But, yeah.
They wouldn't know consistency if you slapped them in the face. That's not their way of doing things. I don't understand it, but I think that's a good sign. They need to find that consistency. Obviously, holding Liverpool to a 0-0, on the one hand, it's admirable. At the same token, it's not what you'd want to see from Manchester United. But we know right now this is not Manchester United. This is Man Red. And until they get their official licenses and figure out who they are, they're going to be stuck in this kind of weird cycle. But I want to focus on one player for Manchester United that I think, especially in this game, really disappointed me. And this season has really disappointed me. And I was talking to a friend who's a Man United fan on the weekend, and he's kind of have what we call the Walcott syndrome. Now, the Walcott syndrome, now I like Theo Walcott, don't get me wrong. but anyway, Walcott syndrome is what happens when a player is on the verge of getting a new contract, and they somehow turn into peak Henry, and then once they sign that contract, they go back into being peak Yaya Sanogo or Mariman Shamak, whichever one you prefer.
Sanogo.
And I think with Rashford, last year he was doing amazing things on the pitch. And yet this season, it's like the guy has forgotten the fundamental basics of football. Sometimes when it's not working out for you, you need to shift. You need to move. There was a pass that Sofiane Amrabat played towards him on the weekend. He was on the wing. Sofiane had won it back and passed to. Now, admittedly, the pass was slightly. It was misplaced. But it's the fact that Rashford didn't even attempt to reach it. He just stood and watched the ball roll past him like, bruv, you're not Ronaldo. And even when Ronaldo used to do that, it used to annoy me because I'm like, because you could probably get there. I know you got to sprint a bit, but you could probably just get a touch on it, and you never know, you might make something. But you just watch it go past like, nah, I ain't stretching for that. How does like from a football perspective, how do you look at Rashford where he's at, and what do you think needs to happen now?
I think we said this, I think, not a week ago, last week. Controversial. I think he needs to move. I think he needs to go. I think he's mutually between him and the club. They're not giving him what he wants. And I don't think he's giving them what they want. Not in recent times anyway. Not that explosive pace and that enthusiasm and that excitement that he used to get when he put on that shirt and go on there and deliver. Even when he was at his rawest, there was something quite dangerous about him because you just didn't know what he was going to do. I just think years upon years of disappointment, years upon years of pressure, years upon years, the fact that football, I don't think he has a massive. This is going to sound no, it's not going to sound strange because a lot of footballers have said it. I don't think the passion's there anymore. He's had off-pitch things that he's had much more importance on, whether it's giving food to like the poor. Obviously, that horrible thing that happened after the Euros, and I think he's having like a crisis of faith in the sport because it's like, am I loving it as much as I do? I delivered, I tried my best, and it almost feels like it wasn't enough. And this time it's showing it because he's nowhere near the form he was last season. They're out of the Champions League on a whimper. They're out of the Carabao Cup. They're not going to do much in Premier League, and then of course he always have the FA Cup, someone they can rely on. But as for what he can do and what he is capable of, it hasn't. I think he's reaching the end of his tether, and I do think a move will do him some good. Where that move is, I don't know, but he needs to kind of have a rejuvenation because we know of what an exciting player he can be, and just at his age dictates that he's not old. He's still got time where he can put more on his game, have a late bloom, and go on and do something crazy. He could do a knee and right and go on if he keeps that skill and that technique he has, and that deadly right foot he has. He's still got years ahead of him, but it almost feels like he's falling out of love with the club, and he sees it, but he's also not doing enough to drag them, which I think many people are convinced by, dragging them out of where they are right now.
For me, he's a centre forward that's playing on the wing, and he needs to get back into the middle and get back to basics. And if anything, if Man United right now, of how they're struggling to find goals, struggling to create stuff, try a two up front with Hodgson and Rashford, and have Rashford playing slightly off Hodgson and to the left-ish, with Garnacho further outside of him. Just try it. You never know. At Arsenal, we struggled with Lacazette and Aubameyang in Emery's first season. What does he do? How does he make it work? Just put them both up front and say, no, you lot figure it out. And we scored so many goals. Yeah. Fortunately, the new contract came, and then, like I said, put on weight. Like I said, stopped scoring. Aubameyang gave up football. The rest is history. But at least, they got to try something. I think playing him off the wing, to me, it's wasted. I know he likes to dribble. I like to do all that kind of stuff. And I look at Mbappe in a similar vein when he had Messi and Ronaldo, Messi and Neymar, and now this season when he doesn't have them. Yes, he might look better in some regards because he's got the space and the freedom when he's playing wider. But I think last year he was a better player. And I think now you're seeing what happens when you give into player power and give them what they want, but actually it's not necessarily the best thing for them. So Rashford, get back through the middle, mate, and that's where you belong, and that's what we want to see from you. We'll end on your game. Sheffield United 2-0 win. With Chelsea, it kind of feels like it's redundant talking about you guys because you just seem to pick up points, lose points, pick up points, lose points. You're just so inconsistent. But you won.
Win.
And it's good. What's your overall kind of summary and your thoughts on the game and what's next for you guys?
Next few games we've got Wolves next, and we've got Palace next. And I mean, but our first game against is Newcastle tomorrow night at the Carabao Cup. Majority of those are winnable games. I just think that it was a much changed side, obviously, with lack of Sanchez being goal. We got a very young keeper. I think he did really well in the pre-season. He did really well there. And I think also having a boost of Nkunku on the bench, I think gives a slight little glimmer of hope. Where he's actually going to play during this Christmas period, I do not know. But I just think we got to take each game with a different kind of I think what happened is he found a good team that he liked, and then we had the international break after Man City, and it all fell to pot, and it hasn't really worked since then. I truly think now it's a case of you've got all these players, play them. Even because we're not in a position where we have a set team that's going to be good enough to perform, because it's just not working. What you need to do, we have right now, it's not the best thing to do, but seeing as we're so experimental right now, and seeing as we're so young, start chopping and changing. And that chop and change works, granted, against Sheffield United, who are the bottom club, but we're not in the position to be picking and choosing when we want to win. We have to win every single game that is in front of us. So if tomorrow's game, if anything, I expect more changes there. Experiment a little bit. Have your main players that should be playing, like your Jacksons, like your Palmers, like your Mudriks, who still needs game. Keep playing Caicedo. With Enzo, it's not working with him playing every single time, although Enzo would have been good against Sheffield United. Find a spot for him. Eventually, Levy is going to come in. Fofana will come back. And then you got Nkunku as well. And it looks like he's coming in potentially at the right time when we're going to have more tough games. We're going to go to the Emirates. We're going to go to Anfield. We're going to go to the Etihad. We're going to need someone like that who knows how to find goal. Hopefully he's retained some of that form from pre-season. We'll never know. But we're experimental. The games are going to come thick and fast. Mix around. We've got not that much to lose at the moment. So providing we don't end up in a relegation fight, just keep mixing. You've got the ingredients there. Just keep the players behaving. Don't keep getting them sent off, for crying out loud. We've got 2 games with no red cards. That's great. Or maybe 3. But yeah, just keep working with the players you got. If you're gonna keep these young players happy, you're gonna have to find a spot for them. This is the jam that we're in, because the likelihood of us getting anyone in January should not even be on the cards. We've got 2, maybe 2.5 squads worth of players. So keep playing. Get everyone a minute. Bros are playing and all that kind of stuff. Keep it going. Keep it going. But let's build on this win. That's going
to be important, building on the win, and we'll see how things go. But just to recap, the Premier League table for as of this game week, as of right now, Arsenal top on 39 points, Liverpool in second, Liverpool, Aston Villa both on 38 points. Liverpool second, Aston Villa third. Man City in fourth on 34 points. Big shock this early in the season, but it's Man City. Never write them off. Tottenham are behind them in fifth on 33. Newcastle in sixth on 29. Man United in seventh on 28 points. Top 4 might not be that far away. Man United, you could still make it. West Ham in eighth on 27, and Brighton in ninth on 26. Chelsea in 10th on 22 points. Fulham in 11th on 21 points. Brentford, Wolves and Bournemouth all have 19 points each. Then in 15th place, we've got Crystal Palace on 17 points. Everton in 16th on 16 points. Big claps for Sean Dyche. 4 wins on the bounce. They've got Tottenham next in the league away from home. That could be 5-5. It should be 5-5. Make it 5-5. Nottingham Forest in 17th on 14 points. Very interesting chain of fortunes for them this season. They are ones to be concerned about the drop. Then the bottom 3, Luton in 18th place on 9 points. Burnley in 19th place on 8 points. And Sheffield United also in the bottom of the table on 8 points as well. Burnley surprises me a lot, but there's still time for them to figure things out, and we'll see how things go. We're going to have a different episode for Christmas, so stay tuned for that, and we'll see you all properly in our next full episode in the week of madness of fixtures. Take care, everyone. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.